what is the true commitment that the 49ers cannot get out of unless Brock Purdy would engage in some sort of on-field or off-field misconduct that would allow them to avoid paying him the rest of the money.
Mike Florio joins us now on the River Islands guest line. As all guests on 95.7 The Game appear on the River Islands guest line. Isn't it time for you to discover the islands, River Islands in Lathrop? And we're talking about Brock Purdy's 5-year, $265 million contract. $181 million of that is guaranteed. And before I get into that contract, Mike, we've been talking a lot about franchise quarterback, and Shasky and I, Joe Spadoni here, given our own definitions. How would you define, in Mike Florio's definition, of what a franchise quarterback is?
Well, first of all, I'm glad to know that you guys are smart enough to realize when I'm on hold. So if you're going to talk crap about me, you'll have to deal with me. You can go back to talking crap about me after the interview ends. Now, and second of all, good morning.
Good morning.
I look at franchise quarterback, and there could be more definitions of franchise quarterback than there are franchise quarterbacks. To me, the truly elite quarterback is the guy who, when the play that's called isn't there. Now, obviously, when the play that's called, if it is there, he can deliver and execute and get the most out of the play that's been called. But in the occasions when the play that's called isn't there, he can make chicken salad on the fly. The Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, the best of the best, Joe Burrow, guys who can make something good happen in those inevitable occasions where the pre-snap chess match results in something not good happening. Those are the guys who are the truly elite. Those are the guys who should be the highest paid. But we know that the way the game works, the guys who should be the highest paid aren't always the highest paid. And there's no shame in not being a short list best of the best franchise quarterback. Like, we have consistently said Brock Purdy's middle of the pack. There's nothing wrong with being middle of the pack. If he's number 16, right dead in the middle, there's only 15 quarterbacks in the world who are better than the guy who was the last pick of the 2022 draft. That's a major accomplishment. The challenge has always been, how do you properly reward financially a guy who is up for a new contract but isn't one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL? And Brock Purdy will never be one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. The question is, will he be top 10? A lot of that is driven by accomplishment. But for now, the contract, it needs to reflect, it should reflect, and we've argued for months that the 49ers would be stupid if it didn't reflect the reality that he's not a top 10 quarterback. And again, there's no shame in being 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, or 16. Somebody has to be that. And whoever is in today's NFL is still going to get paid a lot of money.
That's Mike, I'm so glad. I feel like there's no nuance. I'm like, hey, look, I really like the player. I think he's really good. But I also acknowledge, like, this is a lot of money. And I probably pressed into the same situation as the Niners would have gave him something similar to what he got. But $181 million, people are acting like it's not. It is a lot of money. Both things can be true. I really like the player. I want him to be my quarterback. And 181 guaranteed is a lot. That doesn't mean that he didn't earn a big pay raise and that I don't, like, I want him as my quarterback, but it just makes it a little trickier to try to build the team around him to maximize that money. So when you saw 181 guaranteed, what did you think?
Well, there's a basic reality in all major quarterback contracts. And here's how the game is played. When the deal is done, the agent will leak the best possible numbers to the folks in the media whose value is driven by getting to their phone and thumbing out the tweet faster than anyone else. Usually 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people will get the information at or about the same time. And you don't get the text if you aren't in the habit of parroting the information that the agent wants out there. So that's why we always see the biggest possible numbers in the initial tweets. And that's also why we don't get the truth for several days. The agent has no incentive to put out the real structure, the real value, the real nuance of the deal. The agent wants to wave the flag with the biggest possible numbers and the best possible characterization, because that's the way the agent parlays this contract into more clients. That's the basic thinking. And if you guys remember, it's now been 11 years ago. When Colin Kaepernick got his second contract with the 49ers, it was initially characterized as the greatest deal ever given to any player in the history of the NFL. And then when we got the numbers and the details and we started picking through it, it's like, this isn't really as good as the agents tried to make it seem. That's the way the game is played. So when you say $181 million guaranteed, that isn't fully guaranteed the moment he signs Brock J. Purdy or whatever his middle initial is at the bottom of the contract. I'll just go with J. J is the safe guess. When he signs his name, he's not guaranteed to make $180 million no matter what. He's guaranteed for injury. So if he has some career-ending injury, which almost never happens to a quarterback, if he has a truly career-ending injury, he gets the $181 million paid out over time. And the 49ers will have insurance available to help defray that. The key factors for any of these contracts, what's the signing bonus? Because the only truly guaranteed money is the money that they have already given you or committed to giving you that you can always have and they can't get it back unless you violate the contract in some way. 2, the full guarantee at signing. That's the key. And then 3, the cash flow over 3 years / how many years are they committed to keeping you? Is it a 1-year commitment like the Seahawks gave to Sam Darnold? Because after this year they can move on. Is it a 2-year commitment? Is it a 3-year commitment? That's really the key. And we're not going to get any of that until Brock Purdy and his new contract have slipped way down the stack of relevant NFL stories. It may not be till the end of this week. Maybe this Friday, in the Memorial Day weekend, we'll get the numbers and no one will pay attention to them. So that's the important thing to keep in mind when we look at this. We don't really know what kind of commitment the 49ers have made. And I made the argument after the George Kittle deal was done that there were some parallels potentially between the Kittle deal and the Purdy deal that would allow it to look great and sound great. But then when you dig into it, maybe it's not as great. And that's good for the 49ers. So just the basic analysis, we heard $53 million per year in new money. Well, the reality is it's a 6-year contract that pays out $45 million per year. That sounds more reasonable for the 49ers. And then the challenge will become looking at the contract and figuring out what is the true commitment that the 49ers cannot get out of unless Brock Purdy would engage in some sort of on-field or off-field misconduct that would allow them to avoid paying him the rest of the money. So we don't truly know. But what we do know is this. Even the best possible characterization of the deal has him tied for 7th on the list of highest paid quarterbacks based on new money average. So, it's not like he went straight to the top of the stack. When Jimmy Garoppolo was due for a new contract after half a season with the 49ers, he was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL for about 2 weeks until Kirk Cousins was signed by the Vikings as a free agent. So, Purdy is starting tied for 7th. I would suggest in a few years, that contract is going to truly be middle of the pack.
Talking with Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk here on the River Islands Guest Line on the Morning Roast. Author of Father of Mine and Son of Mine, both available on Amazon. Also has a Christmas book, On Our Way Home. Mike, talking about Kyle Shanahan and all this. Okay, so he's got 2 years remaining on his contract. Brock now, essentially, we have the full details aren't out yet disclosed, but 3 years on his now. So one in between that. Is Kyle Shanahan, as San Francisco 49ers head coach, I can't say where else, but as San Francisco 49ers head coach now, is Kyle Shanahan now tied with Brock Purdy? Is his success now tied to him and his own future on the team?
Well, yes and no. The 49ers wouldn't be the first team to move on from a coach despite having a quarterback who has a contract that extends beyond whenever they would move on from the head coach. We see it all the time with quarterbacks who are taken high in the draft. The current regime brings the guy in. The current regime gets shoved out the door, and then they have to get a new coach, new GM, new whatever, and hope that the new people want the guy that the old regime brought in. And a lot of times that doesn't match up. Sometimes it happens quickly, like when Josh McDaniels got rid of Jay Cutler the moment he became the Broncos coach. Other times they wait a year. And they allow more evidence to be created that the quarterback is part of the problem and the quarterback needs to go too. But every GM wants his own head coach and every coach wants his own quarterback. And if the system was working well enough with the current quarterback, the coach wouldn't have gotten fired. So there's always kind of a presumption, I think, by the people who are hired to come in and fix a franchise that was broken to the point that the last coach got fired. The quarterback's part of the problem. I need to get my own guy. So they're not necessarily tied together, but if Shanahan goes, there's a chance that Purdy will not be around a whole lot longer than that. That's why it makes the structure so critical. What is the true commitment? Is it 2? Is it 3? That is the key. 2 years or 3 years. That's going to be the first thing I look at when the real details of this contract are finally available.
So are you reserving judgment until that?
Reserving judgment on what?
Like, do you think, without knowing whether it's 2 or 3 years, is this a good deal for the Niners?
Well, the initial indications suggest it's a good deal for both sides.
Gotcha.
This is a guy who was the last pick in the draft. He was never expected to get a second contract as anything other than a backup. So for him to end up with $53 million per year in new money, $45 million on the 6-year deal, I was saying a few weeks ago the Kirk Cousins contract makes sense for Brock Purdy. And what's Cousins' deal worth? $45 million per year. At signing, he signed it as a free agent. How much was fully guaranteed at signing? $100 million. As a practical matter, it was 90, but there's another 10 that kicked in earlier this year. The Falcons let it kick in. They're paying him $100 million fully guaranteed. And I've seen some suggest that the full guarantee for Purdy is $100 million. So I think it's a win-win. The reality is going to be, does Purdy keep playing well? If he does, you're going to see that average dip farther and farther down the stack. And if he doesn't, then you start looking at the deal and figuring out where the breaking point is. That's why that Deshaun Watson contract with the Browns is such an albatross and an outlier. When you commit to 5 years fully guaranteed, nobody does that. 5 years fully, and nobody's ever going to do it again after what happened with Watson. If the player doesn't deliver, you're stuck. So that's why the true commitment is so critical, because the team needs to have the flexibility to say, you know what, this hasn't worked the way we thought. And when you're a top 5 guy, a true top 5 guy, Burrow, Allen, Jackson, Mahomes, etc., it never happens. Once you've made it clear you're one of the best of the best, you don't suddenly wake up one day and you can't play anymore. And it makes it safer to do a long-term deal with a player like that, because he's proven that he's great, and that's not going to change. With Purdy, I still think we have to see how this all plays out. Look at how they played last year with all the injuries and everything. We've seen plenty of quarterbacks out there, great quarterbacks who have overcome that and taken a team to the playoffs. The record down the stretch last year was not good. So I think that we've yet to know how it's going to break, how his career is going to break. But I think there are indications in the contract based upon what we've seen so far. And I don't think it was an accident that this thing got leaked at 5 o'clock Eastern time on a Friday. That's where bad news goes to die, not good news goes to thrive. I think when we start digging into this thing, we're going to realize, hey, you know what? As quarterback contracts go, this is pretty good for the 49ers. It gives them protection. It gives them flexibility. And it forces Purdy to keep proving he can play at a high level.
Wow. Okay. Well, now you're kind of, swaying me on this. No, because, the initial reports like $53 million. That's just a lot of money. I mean,
but that's the game. That's
I know.
The game. The
You're
agents
right.
want and here's the problem. And I said this earlier this year, and I got all of the insiders pissed off at me, but I really don't care. The insiders are part of this external PR effort, and they play the game. We know what the tweets look like now. Player X signs contract worth huge number of $1 million per year per sources. Deal was negotiated by insert names of agents. The agents are the ones putting that out there, and the insiders go along with it because it gets them the information. It placates their editors and producers, and that's good enough, even though the ultimate characterization to the audience is false. And that's the way the game is played. That's how it goes, when in Rome, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, we view our role in all of this to come in after the fact when the real details are available and explain to everybody what it really means.
No, I love your clarification there, and I appreciate you for just kind of like illuminating just the whole quarterback conversation in terms of the money and the insiders like that. That's really important because the money's all over the place, and it's just hard to kind of know what's real, what's funny, what's not. But let me ask you this: forget the fans, because fans want championships. Some fans will do cartwheels to protect their guy, even if they come up short in the playoffs. For you, how does Brock Purdy justify this big of a contract moving forward?
He's got to go out and he's got to perform well, and the team's got to play well. They got a good draw in the early weeks of the schedule. That is so critical to a team's success. If you get off to a good start, confidence leads to more confidence, and a team that maybe wasn't expected to do much can build the kind of momentum that the next thing you know, they're in the playoff chase. They need to take full advantage of it. He's going to have to perform better to make up for the fact that the team is changing around him. It was jarring when I saw the tweet from Cam Inman with the opening day roster from, not opening day, but the Super Bowl roster from just 16 months ago. And at one point, 11 of the starters were gone. Now, Kyle Juszczyk has since come back, but 10 of the 22 starters on offense and defense gone from Super Bowl 58. There's a lot of change with the 49ers, and a lot of that obligation to replace the players who are gone with effective performances on the front office and the coaching staff, but it does put more pressure on Brock Purdy because it's a hell of a lot easier to play quarterback when you have a lot of great players around you. If all of a sudden the players around you aren't as great as they used to be, it's easier to get exposed if maybe you're not getting it done at the level that you otherwise would if you were blessed by having great offensive line, great receivers, great running backs, great defense, great everything. Quarterback looks a lot better than maybe he otherwise would be.
Talking with Mike Florio here on the Morning Roast Pro Football Talk, author of Father of Mine and Son of Mine, both available on Amazon. And one more for you, Mike. We appreciate it this morning on a Monday. The no trade clause. Mike Garafolo, NFL Network, announced that Brock Purdy's $265 million extension included a full no trade clause for the duration of the deal. What does that mean if I'm just a 49ers fan, just going out there? It's like, all right, does Brock now control? If Brock wants out, does he control where he goes? Do they just cut him? What does the full no trade clause mean?
Well, every quarterback with a high-end contract has a de facto no trade clause because no one is going to trade for a quarterback who doesn't want to be there. The quarterback is the most important player on the team. The quarterback has to be fully committed. He needs to show up early, stay late, work on Tuesdays, as most of them do, except for Kirk Cousins. Be all in, set the tone for the rest of the team. You're basically a coach who is in the locker room and in the huddle and on the field. You want and you need the quarterback to want to be there. Mike Tomlin, the Steelers coach, always says we want volunteers, not hostages. Quarterback is the ultimate. He needs to be a volunteer. So no trade clause to me is meaningless because nobody's trading for the Brock Purdy contract if he doesn't want to play for that team. And if it ever gets to the point where before cutting Brock Purdy, the 49ers are exploring trade options, it gives him the ultimate control. But even without the no trade clause, you're not just going to dump a guy onto a team that doesn't want him. I don't think Aaron Rodgers had a no trade clause. The Packers weren't going to trade him to some team he didn't want to be traded to because that team isn't going to want a guy who doesn't want to be there. You got enough problems managing a football team without a quarterback who just doesn't want to be there. So, hey, it's better to have it than not have it. And I don't know what Brock Purdy had to give up to get it, but I wouldn't give up any real value as to other terms in my contract for a no trade clause because the contract itself, the position itself, the status itself creates essentially a no trade environment.
So the Niners, the last, 6-7 years have done a great job trading and extending guys, whether it's Trent Williams, CMC. They did it with Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously, at one point. They fired off big in free agency, Javon Hargrave, Travarius Ward. Do you trust them to build the team around Brock Purdy through the draft?
Well, I think the draft is where the 49ers have done a great job of finding the specific kind of player that I think you need in today's NFL with reduced contact, reduced padded practices, reduced opportunities to work on fundamentals like tackling to the ground, which we almost never see in practice anymore. Chris Sims and I have been saying for years that the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have done an excellent job of finding the mid to late round guys who are wired the way Lynch was. They'll roll out of bed and they'll kick your ass. And they're go, go, go all the time, and they throw caution to win. Now, the problem is those guys get injured, too, but they have done a great job of drafting and identifying the players and then developing the guys who will come in and give you that kind of extra, that George Kittle quality, the Dre Greenlaw quality, the badass, there's a physicality there that other players just don't have. So that's the challenge, I think, as they go through this transition. can they find more guys like that and get those guys developed and turn those guys into the next wave of star players?
Hey, Mike, really good stuff. We greatly appreciate it this morning, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys.